Well, hello. I'm Josh, and I am back in the fourth week of October. So, in these Halloween themed recommendations I've been giving you, I've talked about thrillers, ghost stories, more ghost stories, but I've noticed I have not touched on any monster movies. You know, the classic monster films of the 30s and 40s, everyone's go to when they think of Halloween. And I have been trying to pick films that people haven't heard of, but I think there has to be at least one classic monster movie in here. And what better film than the one that started it all? Tod Browning's 1931 Dracula. The film begins with Renfield traveling to Dracula's castle for a business matter. Everyone he encounters along the way is very wary of the castle and tries to get Renfield to stay at the inn, but Renfield continues on anyways. He has an eerie encounter on the way with a stagecoach driver and eventually reaches the castle. There he meets
Dracula.
and all goes downhill for poor Renfield from there. For Dracula has big plans as he has set his sights on London. And Dracula comes from the novel of the same name written by Bram Stoker. However, like last week's film, The Innocents, it's actually an adaptation of a stage play, one which greatly condensed the 400 plus page source material. It leaves out or greatly condenses many of the bigger set pieces from the book. And once it gets to London, everything's kept to just a few locations. The story becomes sort of a murder mystery as Dr. Van Helsing tries to prove to everyone that Dracula is a vampire, and Carl Laemmle Jr., who was the head of Universal at the time, initially intended for Dracula to be a much bigger production, but then the Great Depression hit and they had to lower the budget quite a bit, and they ended up relying much more on the stage play. The other issue they had to overcome was how to handle the violence from the book. The novel is known for having some very gruesome and scary moments, several of which could have never been shown in a film in those days. And because of this, pretty much all of the violence in the film is shown off screen. And a number of the story's more gruesome moments were omitted altogether. So much so that many of the novel's biggest fans never considered the 1931 Dracula film to be a true adaptation of the story.
They've never paid any attention to the book. I did it on the radio. I did it on the radio. It's the most hair-raising, marvelous book in the world. They've never used anything from it. They haven't even opened the book.
So you're probably wondering, well, if this is such a cheap kind of toned down version of the story, then why do people love it so much? Why is it still so highly regarded and why has it had such an impact on our culture? In some ways, even more than any other film. Well, I think that can be attributed to three people: the film's director, Tod Browning, the film's cinematographer, Carl Freund, and of course the film's star, Bela Lugosi. Tod Browning has since been regarded as one of the greatest horror directors of his generation, with films such as, of course, Dracula, along with other classics such as London After Midnight and Freaks. However, the level of contribution that Browning brought to Dracula has been brought into question. Some accounts say he was very involved in the process, while others say he was actually quite distant, leaving the cinematographer Carl Freund to do most of the directing himself. Now, I'm not sure how true this is. From what I've read, this would have been kind of out of character for Tod Browning to have just stepped back and let someone else direct his film. But I've also heard he had a lot of trouble with studio and different conflicts there, so I don't know. And regardless of whether or not Carl Freund secretly directed the film himself, his fingerprints are definitely all over Dracula. At the time, Freud was one of the most successful cinematographers in Germany. He shot many of the great German expressionist films. He had recently moved to America, and his experience with German expressionism had clearly influenced the look and feel of the film. Another interesting fact about Dracula is it actually has a twin in a sense. Yes, a Spanish version of the film was actually shot at the same time, using different actors and a different crew, but the same sets and the same script. The English crew would film during the day, while the Spanish crew would film during the night. And over the years, many people have debated over which version is better. And many critics say the Spanish version is superior, with better shots and just technically more interesting. The acting is not quite as subdued, as the filmmakers were not quite as limited on what they could show. And also some small errors that they noticed that were made in the previous version that day could be improved on for the Spanish version that night. So it may seem that the Spanish version of Dracula is actually the superior one, and after watching both, I can see why some people might enjoy it more. Despite being made from the same script, the two have several differences. For instance, the Spanish version is almost 30 minutes longer than its English counterpart. And though I do like some of the changes that they make in the Spanish version, I do feel like a lot of scenes were actually done better in the English one. But the main place where the English version is just undoubtedly superior is with Dracula himself, Bela Lugosi. I thought the Spanish Dracula was fine. He could be kind of goofy at some points and had some pretty crazy overreactions. And in the end, he's just no comparison to Lugosi. Bela Lugosi's Dracula is Dracula as far as most people are concerned. He's actually quite different from the Dracula described in the book, especially with his appearance. But this film really established Dracula so firmly as Bela Lugosi that really when you think of Dracula, he's really all that comes to mind. And no matter how much everyone loves the Christopher Lee and the Gary Oldman Draculas, this is the one everyone gets compared to. I mean, just looking around in the store during this Halloween season, it's almost impossible not to see a reference to Lugosi's Dracula. I mean, he's everywhere. On cereal, on Sesame Street, on candy. Everyone looks like that 1931 Dracula. And on top of that, they all sound like Bela Lugosi as well. Lugosi was actually not a fluent English speaker at the time, and so many of his strange inflections are partially due to him having to learn all of his lines phonetically. So it would seem that with all this popularity and success that Lugosi brought the studio, he would be a shoo-in for tons of sequels. I mean, you can't replace Bela Lugosi as Dracula in a classic monster movie. Well, apparently you can, because that's just what Universal did. They got him for really cheap as Dracula in the first place, as Lugosi, who was a huge success on Broadway as Dracula, practically had to beg for the role in the film. He didn't have a contract though, and so he got shuffled around for a bunch of smaller roles. And aside from Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein, he never played Dracula again. His career dwindled in his later years, and his final film was Ed Wood's notorious Plan 9 from Outer Space. And these final years of Lugosi are actually depicted in Tim Burton's 1994 film Ed Wood, where Martin Landau won an Academy Award for his portrayal of Bela Lugosi.
And cut! That was perfect.
So if you'd like to watch Dracula, it's available on all the major streaming sites as a rent or buy option. And it's pretty easily available physically as well. And if you're curious, most versions actually come with the Spanish Dracula as a bonus feature. And if you really like these kind of monster movies, then I have a box set you might be interested in too. Here it is. It's pretty cool. All the major monster films are represented here. So if you really like these kind of monster movies, I can definitely recommend this. It's got tons of bonus features too, so it'll definitely keep you busy. Alright, let's see. So now for the week's comment question. So I'm asking, what's your favorite Dracula film? There are so many adaptations of the Dracula story. It's pretty crazy, really. And though this is definitely the most iconic, it's not necessarily the best, or everyone's favorite. So put your favorite in the comment section below and start discussing. Other than that, hit the like button if you like this video, and subscribe if you want to see more. Or if you're just a cool person. But anyways, tune in next week for the final horror film in this spooky series of episodes, right in time for Halloween. So remember to keep watching movies, and I'll see you next week.
Listen to them, children of the night. What music they make.